Hi, I'm Shane Snipes, and this is your lecture for week 1. I wanted to cover some of the material in the book for you so that you can get an idea of how these concepts might come together, not just in terms of reading them and then doing some of the activities in the class, but also hearing about some of the ways that these different concepts have played out in the real world when I've worked with clients. There are a couple of places in the book that you'll really want to focus your attention. One of the first places that you're going to want to do that is on page 21, and it really talks about how we got to where we are right now in terms of our thinking and the ways that we've approached environmental issues up until now. On page 21, you will actually notice that that's the first diagram that we're looking at, and that diagram here, as Singay refers to it, is a causal loop diagram, and we're going to be looking at a lot of these loops throughout the class. We're actually going to be making some of these loops ourselves in time, using PowerPoint and some of the other tools out there to actually create some of the loops and seeing some of the relationships between the things that you're reading about in the book right now. One of the things that you'll see on page 21, if you look carefully, is it talks about specialists and how specialists have been used in some situations to sort of shield those decision makers from making the tough decisions and actually dealing with some of the ecological issues. People tend to take the perspective that it's someone else's problem, and that if someone else can deal with this, someone else has the expertise to deal with this, then they themselves don't have to do that. And that's not scapegoating or even avoidance as much as it is they don't really have the knowledge or even the beginning foundations of knowledge to start to make those decisions. What you'll discover in this class is that managers don't need to have all the information, but what they do need to have is a good understanding of how these systems might work with each other. So you'll see here that we have that. And the short-term sort of symptomatic fixes that come out of using specialists to lobby and to work for are some of the things that you're going to see happen here. There is a pressure to sort of meet tougher standards and regulations, and that pressure was sort of lightened up during some of the other political times, and I think that happened for lots of different reasons. Some people see regulation as unnecessary. Some people see it as burdening businesses. And there are many cases, and we'll study some of them and look at some of them in Europe where this is not the case, where people have examined environmental issues and come to some very good solutions over time. So we'll examine some of those. You'll also notice here that the fundamental solutions are harder to come by. It takes more time to sort out fundamental solutions and to come up with new product design or new services that deal with issues like that. However, in this day and age, it really is a competitive advantage to spend time on those sorts of fundamental solutions, because you're going to offer something that not only deals with regulations that are coming down the pipeline, like ones that have recently changed for greenhouse gases in California, but also dealing with competitive edge against other companies who just aren't in that place where they're thinking about it yet. And we'll look at companies like Interface, which is a gigantic commercial carpet company, and they've managed to green large percentages of their company. We'll look at them as a case study of an executive who woke up, an old school executive who over the last 10 years has become one of the leading people in the sustainability movement. We'll examine Ray's work in that space. So if you notice here, as we move forward, there's a couple of other pages that are also important. Page 23, sort of near the end of that page, it's a list breakdown of some of the ways that the industrial system was working and some of the larger natural systems. The assumption was that these were limitless, and and there were no boundaries on what we could put on these particular resources. There are, of course, now there is evidence that says that these systems can break down if there is too much of a burden on them. And you'll notice that all the way through page 24 as we examine it. And then on page 25 we actually take it to a visual level. And I think at the visual level you'll start to see here that we in the past have sort of dealt with this idea that we could take all these resources and put them into our manufacturing systems and then develop something and put it into production and then distribute it out, and that would work fine, and that was fine. But there are a lot more people now than there were even a century ago, and this large population growth, and as you'll see on page 25, this concept of consumption, all these things combined really do make for a difficult environment for the planet to continue to replenish itself. You'll also notice here figures 2.1 C and D, there on page 26, are sort of the way that we're moving to and the concepts that we're starting to deal with. What I want you guys to do, and each of you